وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله ربه رحمة للعالمين. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ألا وإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. I bear witness that there is none worthy of our worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I bear witness that Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, is the seal of the prophets and the final messenger to all of humanity. Whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, there is none to misguide. And whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leads to stray, there is none to guide. أما بعد فاليوم إن شاء الله نكمل حديثنا عن الموضوع الذي بدأناه في المرة الماضية، وهو مسألة الإساءات إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في بعض وسائل الإعلام الغربية وكيفية الرد من خلال الأمثلة أو الأحاديث النبوية التي ذكرناها ونكملها اليوم. ومرجع الإساءات إلى الإسلام والنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم على وجه التحديد، يعني ذكرنا بعض الأمور ولكن هي تصب في مرجعها إلى الجهل بالإسلام والجهل بالنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. فوالله لو عرفوه ما شتموه. So last time we started to speak about attacks on Islam and attacks on the Prophet in some in some things in the Western media, in some means of the Western media, and how some Muslims react violently to these attacks on the Prophet and we gave several examples on why these attacks happen on Islam and the Prophet. And the main reason is mostly ignorance. Because as they say, if they know Islam, if they know the Prophet, wallahi, they will never attack him. They will fall in love with him. He came as a mercy to al-Alameen, to the whole world, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. But they don't see this because they don't see it in the actions and the attitudes of Muslims themselves. How would they know? Right? So we have to teach them, and we have to reach out to them and let them know about Islam and Muslims through da'wah. The other reason is historical because of all the history of bigotry and hatred and all the wars that took place between the Muslim world and the Europeans mostly. You heard about the Crusades and all the mistrust and all the injustices that happened in the past, so this is also in the subconscious of so many people. Also, because of all the miseries and the injustices that are going on in the Muslim world, a lot of people are abused, the violations of human rights, and what they see in the media is basically gives a very negative idea about the Muslim world. So whenever they think of that part of the world, the Middle East, they think of Islam and they think of the barbarism and the viciousness of that area. So how do they get a good perception of Islam if we ourselves are not good ambassadors of the faith, right? Also, we spoke about some people who abuse Islam just to gain attention, for publicity, or to make money, and the examples are so many. But some people also think that some of these attacks are meant to distract our attention from the bigger picture, which is there are so many abuses. People are being killed in Palestine, in Syria, in Iraq, in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, in all these places. But every time when you have an incident like this, you start to forget about what is going on in the Muslim world. No one is talking about Palestine anymore. No one is talking about Syria anymore. Why? Because we're distracted with Shawnee YouTube, right? Because we're thinking about something else. So we start to forget the most important issues and the big picture, right? So also some say, well, maybe they do it to provoke a violent reaction from Muslims, which another time or again would be used to prove once again that Muslims are violent people, right? So they run a cartoon about the Prophet ﷺ or say something stupid about Islam or something, Muslims are violent people. So how do some Muslims respond? By acting violently. Then they show it in the news. You see, we told you Muslims are violent people. And this is because of Islam. This is what I hear from some people. Muslims are violent just because Islam teaches them to do this, right? So this is how some people think, and this is why you see these attacks in the media, right? Of course we are mad to to see something like this in the news, like the Prophet ﷺ is attacked because we love him so much. I'm not telling anyone to be quiet about it. I'm not telling anyone to not to do anything or to be inactive or to be a pacifist about what is going on. There has to be a reaction. But we disagree on what to do. Something has to be done, but what it is, right? Because if someone chooses to act violently, you see what is going to happen. Now the image of Islam is damaged for so many years to come in Europe. And the brothers who live there, they know how it looks like now. I was just reading a report. At least 124 attacks have been reported only in the last 2 weeks against Muslims, against masajid, and against Muslim businesses. 124. These are the ones that were reported. Only in 2 weeks, right? Expect some legislations in the future against Muslim immigration, against building masajid, the minarets, the hijab. People working in da'wah will have a hard time. People traveling there will have a hard time. And also the sisters will suffer a lot, because if you're a Muslim brother, mashallah, you wear a jacket, no problem, but if they see a Muslim sister with the hijab, they know that she's a Muslim, right? So the brothers like ourselves, they don't have as much of a problem just like the sisters, right? So all these things are going on there. And what is even more important, you will not get as many people to sympathize with Muslim suffering in Palestine and Syria. Nobody cares anymore. Why would we care with the killers and the barbarians, right? This is how a lot of people think. Why should we care, right? So this is the backlash that resulted from the attack that happened in Paris about 2 weeks ago. How do we react according to the teachings of Islam? Before we share together how should we react based on what the Prophet ﷺ did in Medina, and also what is taught in the Quran, I know that some people back in their mind, they think that what happened in France and in other places was justified. Why? Mainly for 2 reasons. Number one, they say, yes, 12 people died in France, journalists and whatever, and a police officer, so the number rises to 12 or 13. 3 of them were Muslim, right? But see how many people they have killed in the Muslim world. Hundreds of thousands in Palestine, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, So some people think this is justified. Well, I know, and we condemn the killing of innocent Muslims in the Muslim world, in all these countries, the drones and foreign invasion and killing people for no reason, right? We all agree on this. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. If someone does something wrong, they are not your teacher, they are not your role model, you shouldn't do like them, right? We know in the seerah that the people of Mecca, the kuffar, the pagans, if they took some Muslims captive, regardless if they were old or young, men or women, they used to abuse them and torture them. And if they came across the bodies of Muslims who died in the battlefield, they used to mutilate them, like what they did with Hamza and the other Sahaba. Now what was the reaction of the Prophet ﷺ? He said, don't kill a woman, don't kill a child, don't kill people who worship their Lord in their places of worship, don't cut down trees, don't kill animals, and don't mutilate dead bodies. This is what the Prophet ﷺ said in response to the brutalities they were committing against Muslims. So they are not our teachers, right? If they do something wrong, yes, we should react, but in a rational way, right? So this is the first point. The second one, why are they attacking the Prophet ﷺ all the time? And some people say, well, this is hypocritical on the side of Western media, because if you say something about the Jews, for example, this is anti-Semitism. You will be put in jail in some European countries and you will lose your job. No question about that, right? So saying something about Jews, and I'm totally against offending anyone or provoking anyone, right? We should be respectful, right? So this is what I believe. But there are laws in place. There's no such thing as infinite freedom, right? There's no such thing, because there are laws in place. If you attack some people, you will go to jail, right? So saying something about the Jews, for example, is anti-Semitism. There are laws against Holocaust denial. If you deny the Holocaust, you will go to jail, right? In some places in Europe, right? Attacking or speaking badly about people of color, this is racism. Saying something about homosexuals, this is homophobia. You will be in trouble, right? You may lose your job. But attacking the Prophet ﷺ and smearing him and attacking the Quran and Islam, this is only freedom of expression. So now you look at the double standards and the hypocrisy, right, in the Western media. Yes, we should react, but in a rational way. Now you will see how the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba reacted. We gave a few examples last time, but this time as well. Just by looking at the Quran, you will see the attacks on the Prophet ﷺ. They are reported in the Quran, right? So the Prophet ﷺ is described in the Quran by the Kuffar as Sahirun Kadhab. He is a magician and he is a liar. This is what they say about the Prophet, and this is mentioned in the Kuffar. Ya ayyuhalladhi nuzila alayhi dhikru innaka lamajnun. The one who received the dhikr, the reminder from Allah, you must have lost your mind. This is what the Quran says, right? Sahirun Kadhab, Mu'allimun Majnoon, Kada ila akhirih. So this is all in the Quran. And the believers, the Sahaba, they are described by the Kuffar in the Quran as as-sufahat, the foolish ones, the stupid ones. This is what the Kuffar say about Muslims, and this is reported in the Quran. And what they say about the Quran as asatirul awwalin, fairy tales, right? This is what they say, and this is reported in the Quran. How did the Prophet ﷺ react? There are so many examples and so many stories in the Hadith. There's the story of Zayd ibn Sa'na, and the story is given in Al-Tabarani, Al-Hakim, Al-Bayhaqi. He was a Jewish rabbi. He came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ owed him, some dates, like 20 pounds of dates or 30 pounds of dates or something. The Prophet ﷺ was supposed to give the dates to him back on Sunday, for example. So he came on Thursday or Wednesday, 3 or 4 days before the time. And he came and he started to yell at the Prophet ﷺ, وَقَالَ إِنَّكُمْ يَا بَنِي عَبْدِ الْمُطَّلِبِ قَوْمٌ مُطْلِبٌ وَقَدْ كَانَ لِي بِكُمْ عِلْمٌ. And he said, you guys, Muhammad and your family, you never pay things on time, you are always late, and I know that very well. And Umar was sitting there and he said, what is this? How dare you talk to the Prophet ﷺ like this? And his sword was in his hands, and he was ready to fight with him. So the Prophet ﷺ said, leave him alone, give him back his dates, and ask him to be nice when he's asking for his stuff, and ask me to give people their rights on time. And give him 20 more pounds for scaring him, right? So Umar went and he gave him the dates, right? So Umar asked him, why did you do this? He said, because I read about the description of Muhammad ﷺ, and I know his description from my scripture, right? Only 2 qualities I didn't see from him. The first one, the more nasty you are with him, the kinder he is, and he always responds to evil with good. So now I saw these 2 qualities today in front of me, and they say in the hadith that he took shahada and he donated half of his wealth for Islam, right? So this is one example. When the Prophet ﷺ was attacked in poetry, that was the Charlie Hebdo of that time, the cartoons, they were in the form of poetry. There were hundreds of poems making fun of the Prophet ﷺ, making fun of Islam. How many poems, how many of them survived until this day? 0. Not a single line. Why? Because the Sahaba didn't report these poems. The Muslims didn't post them on Facebook. They didn't talk about them. They used to respond by talking about the greatness of Islam. Hassan ibn Thabit, Muslim, one of the poets, he said something bad about the Prophet in a poem. So he responded, أجبت رسول الله فرددت عنه ولي عند الله في ذاك الجزاء فإن عرضي وأبي ووالده لرسول الله لعبد رسول الله منكم وقار. So he said, you attacked the Prophet ﷺ, right? You insulted him, and here I am responding just to get the reward from Allah. Indeed, the honor, my honor, and the honor of my father and his father are altogether a shield or a protection for the honor of the Prophet ﷺ from your attacks. Right? Also, when someone attacks the Prophet ﷺ, as we mentioned in the examples in the Quran and so on and so forth, and the stories in the Hadith, فإن هذا لا ينقص من قدر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أبدا. If anyone at any time attacked the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, this will not detract from the greatness and the nobility of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. Not even once, right? So say for example, if someone looked at the beautiful moon in the middle of the month and they spit at the moon, what harm will the moon get from that? Nothing. The spit will go back to the face of the person who did it, right? So they will never detract from the beauty of Islam or the greatness of the Prophet ﷺ in any way. So we should always keep this in our minds, right? But if the people of Mecca or the Kuffar, they came to Medina with their swords to kill the Prophet ﷺ and attack Muslims, of course the Sahaba stood up with their swords to defend, right? Khalas, it's business now. You're coming to kill us. Now it's self-defense. I defend myself. So now we as Muslims living in the West, we're not living in Muslim countries. There are laws in this country, and when you came with a visa, when you came on PR, or you have the citizenship, you sign some papers, right? That you will be a citizen and you will respect the laws of these countries. And these laws are not, for the most part, they're not against Sharia. Because we studied in Fiqh and Sharia, if you live in a place, they have laws, and these laws are not against Sharia. They're not forcing you to eat pork or drink alcohol. All they're asking you is to be a good citizen, pay your taxes, khalas. This becomes part of Sharia, وَالْمُسْلِمُونَ عِنْدَ شُرُوطِهِمْ. The Muslims have to honor their agreements. This is what the Prophet ﷺ says. So when you come to a country, you have to respect the laws of the country. And the reason why we came here is because here we have freedoms, democracies. You don't have to agree with everything you see around you, but at least you love this country because it has something that our countries back home did not offer us, right? So you didn't choose your country, the country of origin, but you chose Canada to come and live in, right? So as they say that your country, whether it's Egypt or Pakistan or whatever country we came from, this is like your mother. You didn't choose your mother. But Canada is like your wife. You chose your wife of your own free will when you signed the contract, right? So when we come to this place, we have to go by the laws we signed. I'll give a few examples from how the Sahaba, they were living in some places with non-Muslims, and they respected the treaty they made. There is a story of Amr ibn Shaddad. He was employed by a man whose name was Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubayd. Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubayd, he said he was Muslim, but at some point Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubayd claimed to be a prophet. And as we said, Amr ibn Shaddad was tabi'i. He was not a sahabi, but he came, he accepted Islam after the death of the Prophet. So he said, I was standing there guard on this man who claimed to be a Muslim, but now he said he is a prophet, right? So he said, one night I was standing guard over there, and I started to think about killing this man who claims to be a prophet, right? Then he said, when I was about to do it, I remembered a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. مَنِ اتَّمَنَهُ رَجُلٌ عَلَى دَمِهِ فَسَفَكَهُ أَوْ فَخَانَهُ فَأَنَا بَرِيءٌ مِّنْهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَإِنْ كَانَ الْمَقْتُولُ كَافِرٌ. So he said, I remember this hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. If someone entrusted you with their lives and their blood, then you betrayed the trust and killed them, then I will disown you, I will be your enemy on the day of judgment, even the victim was not Muslim. So he remembered this hadith and he didn't do it. So this is one example. Another example is the story of Khattab ibn Adi. Khattab ibn Adi was ambushed with other Muslims, and some of them were taken to Mecca to be killed, right? This was after Ghazwat Badr. So what happened, they took him to Mecca, Khubayb ibn Adi, and they put him in a cell. They put him as a prisoner in someone's house in a room, right? It says in the hadith that they abused him when they took him, right? They didn't give him food, they were beating him and stuff. So he said, قَالَ لَهُمْ أَهَكَذَا يُعَامِلُ الْكِرَامُ ضُيُوفَهُمْ. So when they abused him, he was captive, he was a prisoner of war. You know, they kidnapped him after Badr and something. So he said, is this how generous people treat their guests? Is this how you treat your guests over here? So they were ashamed, they were embarrassed, and they didn't abuse him anymore. Then he told his guards, please let me know before they kill me, and please, if you give me food before I die, don't give me khinzir or any haram thing, just give me halal things to eat before I die, right? So they told him, you are going to die tomorrow. So he said, can I please borrow scissors or something to clean myself before they kill me? And they said, okay. So he said, while I was cleaning myself, this little kid entered the room and came and sat on my lap, right? A little kid that belonged to the kuffar. Then the mother came and saw the baby through the window, and she was terrified. And she started to scream, he's going to kill my baby. He's going to kill my baby. So Khubayb said, do you think I'm going to, as a Muslim, I'm going to kill this innocent soul for no reason? He didn't do anything. Why should I kill him? Please come and take him. And he had the scissors or the knife in his hand, and he didn't do it, right? And they took and killed him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أن يغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا نسأل الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله ربه رحمة للعالمين. As I always say, Muslims will not be the enemy forever. For 5 years, I studied the image of Islam and Muslims in the media. And it seems that, as I always say, every 20 to 25 years, there's always a different enemy. Back in the 1940s, the Germans, the Italians, and the Japanese were the enemy, right? Because they were fighting against the wars in Europe, the Second World War and all that stuff. And by that time, Muslims were not the enemy. They were just the Alibaba people, the Aladdin people, Aladdin and the magic lamps and the flying carpets and all that stuff. They were nice people. Now, 20 years later, it was the Vietnamese. They were the enemy in the 1960s. Again, in the 1980s, it was the Soviets, the Russians, what they called at the time the Red Devils. 20 years later, it's the Muslims, right? So, I'm sure that the day will come when someone else will be the enemy. Maybe the Chinese, maybe whatever, who knows. We're not going to be the enemy forever. So this is the good news. The bad news is, it depends on how we do as a community. We Muslims are the second largest religion in Canada and in the US and probably in the whole world, right? We are not doing enough in da'wah. Alhamdulillah, we have a lot of resources. There's not a single Islamic channel funded mostly by Muslims that is in a good standing, that is funded by Muslims. I know there are some here and there, Islam Channel and Islam TV, but they always have financial problems, right? See in the Muslim world how many channels are there in the Muslim world supported by Muslim millionaires for dancing and for movies. You can even close your eyes. This is the motto they have, right? But how many of them are Islamic channels that are funded by Muslims? Almost zero, right? So we need to do something. We have to stand up, and we have to provide an alternative image for Islam and Muslims. We have to teach people and enlighten them about ourselves as a community. And we, as a Muslim community, as I said several times before, we have to participate in elections. If we don't have candidates, at least vote in the elections, because if they know that you have a voice, you have a political weight, they will think twice before they attack you. Muslims, just like other ethnic or religious groups in this country and elsewhere, they have to work hard to lobby, just like others, to pass legislations, to make it a crime to attack Islam, just like attacking Judaism or attacking the Holocaust is a crime in the law, right? So we can do something like this. We can pass legislations to make attacking masajid, just like attacking churches and synagogues, a hate crime, right? This is something we can do, but it will take all of us together to reach that point. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guarantees in the Quran that the truth will always prevail. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يعلمنا ما ينفعنا وينفعنا ويعلمنا اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا اللهم عافنا واعف عنا يا رب العالمين. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى اللهم لا تدع لنا في هذا اليوم العظيم ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته ولا ميتا إلا رحمته ولا مظلوما إلا نصرته. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins and accept our good deeds and to give us the best in this life and the best in the life to come and give us sincerity in everything we say and do. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give hidayah to all people and to give hidayah to Muslims as well. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه